topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart.
Hello, and welcome to It's Your Voice, the show that hosts enriching conversations in diversity. My name is Bahia Yaksan. I'm a diversity educator and a core alignment coach. I support organizations and individuals in identifying patterns of bias that are not serving them or the people they serve, and helping them step out of it and cultivate new patterns, which are far more inclusive, that create belonging and actual equity in a way that has not been common yet, getting closer to it over time. I have a really exciting show tonight for those who are interested in thinking about how to vote. I know some people are not interested, some people are waiting for motivation, some people want to learn more, and I have an amazing guest, Dr. Michelle Famula. Thank you for being out here today. And we called the show Voters Determine Government's Role Over Our Lives. So if this interests you, tune in and stay with us. Dr. Famula is not only the president of League of Women's Voters, she is also a physician. I'm going to read the bio, but Michelle, come on out while I want to read your bio because it's so interesting. And I was originally asking Dr. Famula to be on to talk about the League of Women Voters, and then I found out about her physician background. So we're going to be able to hit two topics tonight. So I just want to read that you are the president of the Davis, California chapter of League of Women Voters. You joined in 2018 to help encourage voter participation and educate voters about their voting rights and the impacts of legislative issues on vulnerable populations in our communities. You are now a retired physician and former medical clinic director with 35 years of experience in primary care of young adults on a college campus. She's provided internal medicine, primary care, and reproductive and sexual health, clinical care. And you came to California in 1981 and after medical training in New Jersey and New York. And it's after you retired. After she retired, she continues to teach in the UCD School of Medicine, Department of Public Health Services, with a focus on health care policy and prevention care and reproductive and sexual health. Thank you so much for being here and for doing all that you do.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure. My career has been a pleasure for me.
That's wonderful to hear. I wanted to start first with you letting folks know a little bit of history about the League of Women Voters and the mission.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do that. The League's been around for quite a while. It actually was something I had heard about back when I was in my 20s and was interested in what was going on in the country. That certainly was the time of the Vietnam War, the time of a lot of changes in women's rights and civil rights. And the League was something I was aware of as being something that citizens could participate in to become more educated about what the voting issues were. The League's been around for over 100 years, started in 1920 after the 19th Amendment passed. That was the amendment enfranchising women, giving them the right to vote, which they didn't previously have. There were many more rights that they still didn't have after they got the right to vote. But one of the things that I learned about the League, because I thought that pretty much it was there solely to help with the suffragettes and becoming eligible to vote. But actually, the League really went into full swing after the first election, after the 19th Amendment passed, the federal election in 1920, when, much to the dismay of the organizers, only about a third of the eligible new voters voted. And so they did a deep dive and they said, what's going on here? We thought this was something that people, once they had the opportunity, they let their voice be heard. And it turned out that a lot of folks didn't know how to vote, didn't know what was on the ballot, didn't know what their vote would actually mean. So it became something where there wasn't quite the desire when the rubber hit the road to actually go out there and vote. And then some people just logistically couldn't get to the ballot. So what the League was really about was giving people the information that they needed to know how to register, to know where to go to vote, to know what their vote meant, who was on the ballot, what the issues were. And so that they'd have the confidence, not just the right, but the confidence and the access and opportunity and knowledge to cast a vote. And so that was something that really attracted me to the League as I learned that the mission really is, if you want a representative democracy that has meaning, it means that voters need to understand what they're voting for and how to do it and to get there and actually use their voice and vote.
Thank you. And it's so striking how that is still needed today. And thank goodness the volunteers like you are keeping the League of Women Voters alive. And for people who are listening and can't see the banner streaming on the video, the website for the League of Women Voters is lwv.org, and there's all kinds of information. And I love that you informed us that it's nonpartisan. It's to give people information. And I want to just emphasize what you said about it, so that when we have information, we can have confidence and knowledge, and power is knowledge, and using our voice is also using our power. And
the League, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
The League isn't here to pick winners and losers. The League wants the citizens to pick the winners and losers. The League wants the citizens to exercise their assent so that those governing can know that they are representing the will of the people and that the directions they're taking are not really oppressive or dictatorial, but actually where the voters are hoping that their government will go. So the League is not seeking to be partisan. It doesn't endorse candidates. It doesn't endorse parties. It looks at issues. In fact, a major part of what the League does is to study issues and then take positions based on those studies. The League has principles that it advocates for. And then when it looks at legislation, it's asking the question, is this governance that will support those important principles? And is this good governance? Is this sustainable? Is this in line with the will of the people? Those are the kinds of questions the League asks. And then when it makes its suggestions about what measures on a ballot should be endorsed, in a vote, the league recommends vote yes on, and then fill in the blank. It's generally not a statement they make without giving a full explanation for what the issue is and what they anticipate the legislation will make happen over time in order to promote good governance and a better democracy for us all.
That's great. You're by taking a stand and making recommendations, you're helping us see the impact, the potential impacts, or the logical consequence impacts. If I vote no on this, this is what it's likely to lead to. If I vote yes, that's what it's likely to lead to. And that's so helpful. I think that's very helpful to undecided voters. And for someone to do our research, that can take so much time when we have 2 or 3 jobs and we're raising families or we're single parents. I'm always so grateful when there's somebody, a reliable, credible organization does the research for us, and I can decide.
Yeah, well, no, I appreciate your saying that. So the league has 2 major publications in every state, in every election, and those 2 publications are something called Vote with the League, and then they give you their reasons for why they support certain measures. And again, not candidate endorsements, but what's on the ballot as far as legislative measures. And then the other one is something called Pros and Cons. So for me, it harkens back to LeVar Burton when he used to do the Reading Rainbow. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. Well, what the league puts out in Pros and Cons is, here are the folks who have been so strongly in favor of this coming to the voters to pass. Here are the folks who are completely opposed to this passing. And so you have the pros, you have the cons. It tells you who the major contributors to those positions are. In many cases, who the major financiers of those positions are. And then basically the league takes a step back and says, what do you think? But it presents the information in a way that I think is intended to be digestible. A separate thing they put out is something called an easy voter guide. It's not the pros and cons, it's the short version. But people are busy. They recognize that if they're going to give you a 19-page pamphlet on pros and cons, maybe you'll read it, maybe you won't. The easy voter guide, that's kind of a 5 to 7 page pamphlet of, here's what we think are the key principles. Maybe this will help you come to a conclusion.
That's great to know that you are transparent about what the principles are and give all the background and information so people don't have to wonder what's behind this stance. Well, it's spelled out. And I have questions about down ballot voting, but I see there's another question here. I'll read that says, what's the difference between a republic and a democracy? And then, of course, a democratic republic.
Yeah. I'd love to tell you that I am an academic in government. I'm not trying to sidestep the question, but I think I'm very likely to get it wrong. I won't have the exact definition. In a representative democracy, we all do recognize that we are not all called into a room every 4 years and put our hands in the air and say, we want this, we want that. We really do vote for legislators who we ask to go through the myriad. I mean, we have 10 measures on the ballot. And if anyone who's got the energy and the Constitution to look at all the different bills, I'm just speaking California, that have gone through, and all the different committees that look at them, know that they are electing folks to go and represent what they believe is good for us, and a representation of what we would like to see happen. I don't know the formal definition of these
Yeah.
things, to be honest with you, so I don't want to misquote them.
Yeah.
But clearly, we understand we are voting to have our uh, our best interests served by the people who govern us.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate that you just explained representative democracy versus direct democracy, but that's why we pick representatives, which is a really good segue to my question about, I think sometimes, especially when I was a younger voter, the most exciting thing was to be able to vote for the president of the United States. And it was a while before I got more politically aware and gained more knowledge and started seeing, oh yeah, reading and doing research and looking at pros and cons and impacts, before I realized how important it was, how the representatives we choose, whether it's the House of Representatives or senators, that is so important to also research and know who you're voting for and the issues they represent and how they will vote and if they will vote to represent your views.
No, absolutely. We put a lot of emphasis on the presidency, and no surprise. I mean, it gets all of our eyeballs with all of the ads and all of the interviews and all of the travel and the months and months that go into a presidential campaign. Sometimes it seems like these campaigns run for the full 4 years. Um, and
Yeah.
we've heard the names so many times. But what really impacts us so many times, day by day, is our local elected officials, certainly our state legislators passing the laws that impact our day-to-day lives. And when we think about the presidency, um, we have to go back to our simple civics lessons of understanding that presidents do not write laws, that the laws are created up from the people in the Congress, and that's what comes to the president's desk. Now, clearly, an administration tries to influence the direction that bills will take, and the president has the power of the veto. But the president can't create laws from whole cloth. I have heard recently, we've all heard recently about executive action. But if we go back to our civics lessons, this is not the intent of where the power of government is intended to come from. In fact, it's almost a last step when Congress doesn't seem to be able to get its act together. And that, I think, is where we should draw the most concern about divisiveness within our government and polarization of parties. Because the truth is that good legislation, and I think everyone will say this, independent of party affiliation or candidate preference, good legislation comes from that hard work of people with different perspectives coming together and hammering out the laws that govern us in a way that minimally hurts marginalized people and maximally benefits the larger community, and is sustainable and brings in that critical element of the assent of the governed, that we feel like we have been well led and well managed, well overseen, and that our laws are not frivolous or inappropriately hurtful or marginalizing of people and communities. So we need that working together. And we need to recognize that when we vote, it's not just about the president, it's about every other office that leads up to decision making that will eventually fall to the president.
That's such an important point, because we need leaders who understand that we need to have different points of view that can listen and negotiate and work together, voices that unify and don't alienate and don't otherize people. There's a it just benefits everyone when we have a president who actually wants unity and understands it will benefit the people, who actually really cares about the people, and would actually try to unify anyone in any position to work towards understanding and working it out. I like what you said about we all need different points of view to help us develop critical thinking and say, well, and to compromise and like, well, I wanted all this, but I see the point of that. I mean, when we have real representative democracy, that kind of thing, America's missing that, and we're wanting it back.
Yeah. And we know that compromise is not a bad word. Compromise is often the first step to something much better. We just need to figure out how to get there. And oftentimes it turns out to be a much better result than what any one group thought would be the best answer, because we all come with our own experiences. We all come with our own understandings, and those are very diverse in our worlds. And until we are confronted by alternative perspectives in a respectful way, we don't have the opportunity to rethink how it could be better. And if we don't do that, then we risk having a lot of damage on the way to a better solution. I'm also very, very mindful of the phrase united in United States. We are all here for each other. I can hear the word California used as a pejorative. I can hear the word Florida used as a pejorative. It's all us. We are all in this together. And being in it together is something we owe each other. And I believe what's made us one of the most successful and most stable and strong countries in the world, because we have that kind of commitment to each other. And that has troubled me greatly when I hear any suggestion that that's a mistake for us to have that commitment to each other. We need to just dismiss those who don't see it the way we see it. We need to wonder, and we need to ask, why don't you see it the way we see it? And what are we missing? Or what are you missing? What do we owe each other?
Yeah, that's I think so many people are hungry for the ability to do that. Actually, one thing I teach is communicating across differences. And it's amazing how many people are scared to step out of their silos or expose themselves to other views out of like fear or just not knowing, fear sadly is a great negative motivator. And taking risks and trusting through dialogue. I mean, we're lucky we're not at war in this country. We're not being bombed. We're the privileged ones. Not all of us. I know that there's different standards of who's safe in this country and who's safer and who's safest, but we are relatively so privileged. And I just really strongly encourage us to take, dialogue and listen. And then I know it's hard, but I want to go back to some notes I took when we talked the other day, because this is so helpful. Let me see if I can find my little note page. Well, you've already spoken to like the value of like nurturing our representative democracy by like learning and doing critical thinking and maybe trying to read other points of view if you're not talking them. I think human relations is really important in communicating across differences, and which it does motivate us to vote. It does help when we have knowledge and we have confidence. So I really feel like you have touched on a lot of those points, and I wanted to now, if this is a good time, to segue into one issue that seems to be really important to a lot of people. Again, I have skepticism about polling, and but despite that, I have noticed in any polls I see or come upon that reproductive health rights and comes up a lot as like really, really important to so many voters, Republican, Democratic, Independent, women and men. More men are paying attention and supporting and realizing this impacts me too. Like I want to be a father or a partner that's another woman partner. Like this is my family too. It affects families, it affects the economy, it affects our ability to choose how we want to live. And it's just unbelievable that it's even a question mark in this country, that if we choose one candidate, there's lots of like sort of guarantees and promises that female bodies will not have a choice over their lives. It still blows my mind. But I wanted to, you're so good from your experience of breaking down an understanding of what pro-choice means and what like I think our understanding of abortion in America has been really narrow for decades and has a strong bias of like, ooh, you're an evil person if you even think about it. Like that's kind of the limit of some people's understanding of what an abortion is. And I myself have learned a lot from physicians like you since Roe v. Wade was overturned about how necessary what we call abortions are in obstetrical care. And there's so many cases and times that the general public does not understand or knows why this particular medical intervention is critical, and you wouldn't want to take it away from anybody if you cared about all human beings. Sorry.
No, I feel as if two different elements of pregnancy and obstetrical care have been completely conflated and mixed together. And I think, as I mentioned to you before, I do not expect the population as a whole to suddenly have 4 years of medical training and another 4 years of obstetrical residency and that kind of experience. But there is a tremendous confusion, I think, that people have all under the term abortion. And medicine itself makes that a little bit hard because ending a pregnancy in a medical language is abortion, the end of a pregnancy. We used to refer to as therapeutic versus elective abortion. But I think putting that language issue aside, we need to think about what it is that people are trying to communicate when they say they are pro-life, what it is that people are trying to communicate when they say they are pro-choice, and then what has happened since Dobbs to medical obstetrics getting caught up in this wide net of prohibitions about what is standard obstetrical care. And that, to me, has really been a huge disservice to the nation. It's like we went running at 90 miles an hour and we knocked over things and didn't even look back. I think the intent of the initial effort was to eliminate the opportunity to make a choice, so a pregnant woman to make a choice about whether or not to continue an unwanted pregnancy. And I think there are real personal, religious, spiritual ideologies around that individuals have. And then there is a whole different world of obstetrical care that deals with failed pregnancies, imminent miscarriages, non-viable fetuses, pregnancies that risk the life of the mother and require a whole host of medical decision-making choices that have, because of some of these very, very powerful, overarching laws, taken away the opportunity to make those obstetrical decisions with the safety of the pregnant woman as a priority, despite the fact that the pregnancy itself is failed. And it's hard to talk about this without getting too technical, but we are seeing these cases when they talk about a decision being reached by the medical staff, the healthcare providers, and the family about what the next steps should be in this obstetrical care. And that decision being what has been the standard of care as long as we have had the medical expertise to intervene and save lives. And when that decision is made, having that be faced by a different decision by a legislator or a governor or a judge, that course cannot be followed because that's now illegal. I don't even know what to do with that. I want to say, I don't expect all of America to have that medical expertise, but I certainly know that medical expertise has not been invested in our legislators, our executive branch governors, our president, not our judges, even at the level of the Supreme Court. So that some of the decisions that are coming down that really are impacting the lives of pregnant women, their families, their children, as to whether or not their children have the potential of losing their mother to a failed pregnancy, when that did not at all have to happen if proper care was obtained early on. These things are unconscionable. They are not the best of what we should be and can be. And so I think that what has to happen is that everybody just needs to take a giant step back and say, what was the outcome we were looking for here with regard to obstetrical care? Now, there is a whole different realm that I look at as rights and responsibilities. Okay, do I have the right to make someone else's choice? What is my responsibility as a fellow human being to permit people to make decisions for themselves? So as a physician for 35 years, I can tell you that a lot of the interactions I had with patients did not always result in the patient making the decision I would have made if I were them. But I had an obligation to provide them with the medical options that they could select from that would not jeopardize their health and that would give them the right to their own integrity as they saw their life to be lived. And then you stand back and you say, it's your life. It's not my life. You need to make the decisions that you'll make with all of the best information we can all provide you. But then it is your decision to make. And I think that one of the great strengths of this country is that we do all enjoy our rights. We go about our day every day, um, deciding what our families will look like, deciding what kind of career we want to try to pursue, deciding how we want to dress and how we want to look and what kind of flags we want to fly in our yard, who we want to vote for. These are our rights. But with rights come responsibilities. And the responsibility, I think, first and foremost, is to make sure we're also protecting other people's rights and giving them the choice to exercise those rights in the world they live in, following the spiritual guidance they follow, exercising the choices they exercise. And pregnancy is not the only place this happens. This happens in permitting parents to make decisions for their children's well-being, permitting us at the end of our life to decide, do we want that cancer therapy, or have we said, enough. I've lived a good life and now I'm ready to be comfortable, but I'm ready to stop. Do we permit people to make those decisions? There are many ethical questions we answer every day. And I think what being in healthcare has taught me is that I owe it to another human being to permit them their integrity and to honor their integrity and respect the decisions they make. Sorry, very long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's beautiful. I really want you to reiterate it again, but I wanted just to help listeners and viewers have a deeper understanding of the many, many, many ways that pregnancies can go wrong. I also support, as you just so eloquently said, another person's to make a choice. Whether or not I could ever make that choice is not relevant. What's relevant is that I respect other people's choices over their lives, because I am not in their shoes. I do not have their access to resources or lack of access to resources. I do not know their stories, and it's not my job to, just like it's not my job to tell, like I love the other examples you give, like how long they can live, or or how they can terminate their lives, or anything. That's not mine. But I just thought it's just helpful for to hear a few basic things like that you shared with me the other day, like when there are physicians, because you've had the 10 years of training, or 12 or whatever it ends up being after the residency and all that stuff, like ectopic pregnancies,
Right.
that's not, it's still not common knowledge. When there's no viable baby will be born,
Right.
and yet because doctors are so frightened that they will become criminals, they're, well, you can say this better than I can, but women are actually bleeding out, and literally, like in the car, or having to go to another state, or enforced pregnancies of minors who were raped, or who are suffering from incest at home, who are so trapped, like, and so there's, because I'm thinking of a couple things, if you can give examples of the heartbeat law, and
Mhm.
also you mentioned so many unintended consequences of this heartbeat law, and then sorry, I'm throwing, I tend to throw out 3 questions at once. But I also want to talk about, like, when our elected representatives become aware of the unintended, but they still are pushing them for their own reasons, that becomes cruelty to me. That is harsh. That's different from ignorance.
Yes.
But anyway, please, can you say a little bit about like the heartbeat law?
Yeah, so there's an element of ignorance to a 6-week ban, and people talk about it long before people realize that they are pregnant. They're told that they have to make this decision, but the biggest element of ignorance in the 6-week ban is that so many of the pregnancies that will go bad in the first trimester, so many of the early miscarriages don't occur before 6 weeks. They occur well after 6 weeks. So if there is going to be a medical risk involved, and an ectopic pregnancy, I think people have heard about this now so much that they probably could tell me the definition, but the definition basically is a pregnancy that occurs outside the uterus in a space that is incapable of sustaining the 40-week pregnancy that's necessary in order for a normal birth. And because it is the inappropriate place, and because normal pregnancy does not ensue following, what happens is that the damage to the organs inside the maternal body is actually life risking. Now, sometimes you can have a situation in an early miscarriage where it simply miscarries. And that's what I think most people are thinking about. They're thinking about an early pregnancy that just fails to develop and results in an extraordinarily heavy menstrual flow, and then it's over. People are saddened. People are emotionally distraught. They try for the next pregnancy. That's a miscarriage. That is a miscarriage. And that happens very, very often when a pregnancy fails. And many pregnancies do fail. We counsel women that, it doesn't mean that you're never going to get pregnant again. There is a very large percentage of pregnancies that do fail. And having said that, we're all thinking of the ones that need no medical assistance, that nature will take care of. But that's not always the case. And certainly in an ectopic, what is happening there is it is modern medicine that prevents the death or the loss of future fertility for women who are and families that are unfortunate enough to have this devastating loss early in a pregnancy. And those are the biologic graces compared to the other failed pregnancies that occur much later on in development. So while we all know so many people, we are here because we went through 40 weeks of perfectly normal development, and that's why we're here. But we all know so many people who go through a normal pregnancy, and we come to think that obstetric care is, go into labor and delivery and someone will catch a baby. But along the way, there are many things that may go wrong, and medicine is there to try and preserve and protect those viable lives and the maternal care that's needed to sustain them, but also to recognize when there is not a viable fetus, what is the best care for that maternal care to get the mother through that pregnancy. And that is not simple care. That often results in a delivery of a non-viable fetus. Now, that non-viable fetus may have a beating heart, but it is not going to survive outside that uterine environment. And we are not clairvoyant. This is not witchcraft. We know this from years of experience, what a non-viable fetus and what non-viable fetal development results in the end. And there are many procedures that are specifically intended to try and minimize the trauma that may accompany that failed pregnancy. So premature rupture of membranes is something we hear about, where what is a perfectly developing fetus to the best of our knowledge without doing additional chromosomal testing. And maybe one day our medicine will be smart enough to understand why premature rupture happens, why premature labor occurs, why some women go into life-threatening hypertension and eclampsia. We don't always know all of those answers, but we do know that we have techniques that can save the fertility for future pregnancies or save the life, if necessary, of the mother. And that may be the same procedure that ends that pregnancy where the fetus is non-viable. Yes, it's a termination of a pregnancy. And it's a termination that's made because you have some choices here. There are going to be patients who are going to say, I will risk my future fertility. I will risk my life. I will continue this pregnancy if there is a hope of survival for that fetus. And they get the information that physicians in good conscience provide, and they make that decision. There are other families that will say, I cannot risk orphaning my other two children. I cannot risk no future possibility of fertility to sustain this pregnancy that isn't going appropriately. And from the perspective of spiritual guidance, medical guidance, I think that if that is the decision that is made in the context of that patient and that healthcare provider acting in their best interest, I don't see where government intervention has any right, much less obligation, to interfere in that realm. And that's what our laws have to get right, because otherwise it has just been a huge mess that has been made by inappropriate legislation, which is jeopardizing the lives of women and the future of families.
Oh, that is so eloquent. And thank you so much for breaking it down. I find that incredibly helpful, and I hope that's really good information also for our listeners and viewers, and to just spread the word, because we need to be more educated when something like this is at stake, to think of your own, not only perhaps your own life at risk, your own fertility, like that itself is a crushing blow, or someone you love, your mother, your sister, your daughter, your partner, your aunt. The compassion is so important. I think that, like, it just seems like the way you're speaking is with just very high emotional intelligence, right? It's not only medical background, but there's just something really highly intelligent about compassion. And we'd like to think that we can vote for that. We can vote for leaders who care, who want to unite us and not divide us, and who will support individual human rights and not treat some citizens as less than second citizens. It's just the consequences, whether intended or unintended, are just too cruel to fathom.
And to recognize that the people who care about that are coming from a place of caring, not from a place of politics. They're coming at it from their ethical and spiritual and professional perspective about trying to do what they believe is right, and is, helpful and kind and compassionate.
Thank you. We have just about 1 minute, and I just want to thank you for sharing your expertise and two arenas about how to make good government run, and the League of Women Voters information that anyone can access online. at you can leagueofwomenvoters.org or LWV, and keep talking to each other and encourage anyone who needs encouragement to go vote. Know what you want and ask for it by getting educated around any issues that concern you and your family, and please vote. So thank you, Dr. Famula. Thank you, our engineer Rebel. Thank you, our producer Dean Piper, and thank you for the listeners and viewers. Really appreciate your spending time with us, and may we all tune in next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and have enriching conversations in diversity. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech